We're a little behind, but we're really ahead. And I would be happy. We have some more time left in this half hour for you, and you are free to talk about anything you wish. And so you can continue the conversation we just had, if you wish, on the CTO issues or anything else that's come up in the last 3 days. So this piece of time, which is probably going to be, I don't know, 15 minutes or 20 minutes, is all yours. So please, any thoughts, just come on up. The microphones are here. If you have comments, questions, ideas, fire away. Just say who you are and where you're from.
I'm Al Smith from Vancouver, Canada. I'd like to expand a bit on John's idea about spirituality and your project, Inkwell project, on demand destruction effectively, or future demand destruction. I think it's a good model for thinking about demand destruction for the doubling of the middle class. And when people come into the middle class, what objects that use energy will make them happy, right? And how could we maybe model those objects differently to reduce their energy footprint? Because that's the net new opportunity. Rather than dealing with the broken and retrofitting, where you have half-lives of energy production and energy consumption that have to be dealt with. If you're looking at all the net new consumers in the world, and it might be just a slight variation of a Tata car or something like that, I think there's a lot of opportunity there when you're looking at the net new consumptions, changing the social behavior, changing the ideas of what, I put out the idea to the CTO group about the gross domestic happiness product out of Bhutan. Just something from almost a social engineering that is a win-win. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the type of leadership that your Project Inkwell project had 10 years ago. And that, from an efficacy point of view, I don't think there could be anything more effective than redefining what it is to be middle class from an energy footprint point of view, mm-hmm. and how you correlate that with happiness.
Mm-hmm. Good idea. I appreciated having Monica join this group. I've known her for a long time. She's very, very smart, just in general, and she's great at communications. And you notice that many of her comments were focused on communication. Clearly, this is a communications problem. Whoever it was who said, don't let them frame this anymore, don't let the existing stakeholders frame it, that's such a big problem. I mean, that's a political technique that Goebbels invented, I think, or somebody before him, and has been used in a fairly perfect fashion for the last administration. So Karl Rove is probably the world's expert at doing this. And focus testing, getting the right words, and framing is something that what I would call the good guys have never bothered much with. But it is absolutely true what Monica says, and what you're saying. We definitely need to be professional, in a sense, about how this is framed, what are the goals. It's got to be simple to say, it's got to be attractive to do, and it's got to be something which everyone can sign up for. If we don't create a communications package like that, all the science in the world won't matter, won't help.
Good. Beyond communications, Mark, it's about the efficacy, changing what the goalpost is.
Yes.
To become middle class.
Yes.
And if you look at the CTO challenge, CTO people are about products, they create products. You change the suite of products. Remember you talked about the $100 computer with Project Inkwell? There's an equivalent, cheaper, lower GHG footprint television set, which is a package of becoming a member of the middle class.
Right.
In 5 years.
Yep.
You could lead that.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. And of course, it's not just an American problem, it's a global problem. Because most of those middle class folks are probably going to be somewhere else. Yeah, yeah. Other comments? Go ahead.
Bob Anderson from IIT. Somebody in the panel, CTOs, suggested that company campuses and university campuses might be easier demonstrations in cities. And I'd like to support just the 4 things that I see as semi-academic representative of this meeting that are going on in my sphere of influence. Number 1, we are demonstrating an advanced data mining technique that will help us do a better job of protecting and exploiting IP, to address the point that you made earlier in the conference. We're building solar-powered rickshaws in India that will eliminate noise and pollution based on a whole series of new technologies in motors, ultracapacitors, power electronics, and so forth. The name Galvin of Motorola fame, Bob Galvin, age 88, is encouraging us to demonstrate smart grids on our campus. We have a $12 million grant, and that in fact is under construction at this stage. And finally, we're doing retrofit installations of plug-in hybrid technologies to school buses, city buses, and pickup trucks. And so in fact, all these things that seem like they're smart things to do and good things to do from the CTO challenge in some cases are already underway.
Sure. I don't think that the CTOs are trying to reinvent any wheels. I think what they're trying to do is create a package. That's how I took it, at least. And instead of having the old argument of do you like solar versus do you like something that clean coal that doesn't exist yet, I think what they're trying to say is, given the tools we have today, given the technologies that we have today, this can be solved. It's not hopeless, which is the first important message. And not only can it be solved, but here's an exact prescription for doing that. And as Al pointed out, we always have changing technologies. So part of the optimism here, I think, is that if we make decisions today, policy decisions that are based on today's technologies, it can only get better. If we have the political will to attack this thing as a group, there will be changes every day that will make this more and more feasible. Comment?
I guess thinking a little bit about communication, I thought maybe another approach would be, instead of calling League of CTOs, you can call it CTOs on FiRe to solve this way.
Marketing man.
And this way you can have all the network of FiRe to promote it and get other CTOs to sign up and report on it regularly. As you send your SNS on a regular manner, you could have a portion of that be the message from the CTOs on FiRe that how the progress has come, what are the things. And do you agree that this is important enough that we should continue this every year, have the CTOs work on this thing and report on it and continue on this thing rather than changing it each year on a different topic? And I'd just like to hear your feedback on that.
Sure. I haven't even begun thinking about FiRe's program for next year, so I guess your question will get me into that state of mind. I was thinking of taking a week off, but that may not happen. It sounds like a great idea. I love your marketing idea, and the short answer to all these things is yes. So I'll just jump ahead for a moment. We have a product which you have all just heard about by email, which we have agreed to use, called Pathable. And please try it out. It is a made-to-order social network for just this purpose. And so I'm not insisting that you use it, of course. You may not like it, that's okay. If you want to use something else, that's fine with me. But we have a platform now, which you'll find in your email inbox, which will allow you to talk in groups while you're away from each other. And it's kind of made for this kind of situation. So there's a start. And I think there are other pieces to this. As an example, we probably should take the two videos, the opening night talk and this hour, and put them together into a two-part thing so that folks can see both the problem and the solution, and make those available in a widespread way, I think. Not just we can put them on our site, but we probably ought to put them up on YouTube. We ought to put them around various places. I would say right now, anybody here who would like to have those on their company website, it's done. Just give us an email. We'll get you the stuff. And that might be great, you know, in terms of internal teaching in corporations as part of it's a weapon that the CTOs can take home and show to their management teams and get things going. So there are other things we can do. I think we might consider how to document this as a document. We can certainly do that and have a paper version of it. We can take that paper version, put it on the web as a web document, and have it easily downloadable for anybody who wants to see the PowerPoints and so forth. So all that stuff, I'm 100% behind. And if there are more things than that, let me know.
I was just thinking more along the aspects of social change. I kind of wanted to pose a question, which was in psychology, there's the concept of positive and negative reinforcement. And if we're talking about, trying to change the government's position on green energy and moving in a green direction, should there be negative reinforcement? In other words, should there be more active protest that's being facilitated? Where if, for some reason this doesn't work out, should there be people in the streets?
Sure. Yeah. Uh, it's been, I think it's been frustrating to those of us in the baby boom generation that we thought probably at that time by having taken action and essentially ended the Vietnam War, that other further generations would be equally activist. And that hasn't apparently so far been the case. But here's an issue. If you ever needed an issue, this would be it. And it would be just great. I think we're back to Churchill again. Some leader, and maybe it's a student leader, Evan, because when kids were doing that, we had student leaders. Someone like you, Abby Hoffman and so forth, stood up and formed a small group, made a big noise, wrote a book, and we all followed. And it was amazing how fast that happened. You wouldn't believe, literally, as you see revolutions now in various countries, it happened in days and weeks, not years. So it's very possible to do it. It just requires leadership. And so I think I would hope that somebody of your generation is that leader. That'd be very compelling, I think, for the rest of us. Other comments? Thoughts? Pretty quiet. You're all thinking about that airplane, aren't you? All right. Well, I'll jump right into this, and I'll probably try to let you guys out of school early so you can go do exactly that. I had a few thoughts from the whole run of ideas that we've been exposed to that I thought stood out to me. I really want to thank Nate for the problem, and Larry for Nate. That was great. What a guy. And I've seen it framed up before. You've done a great job of framing up, Larry. And Nate did the same thing. And I appreciate the way in which he did it. I think he left us not high and dry and hopeless, but actually seeing that there was a way. I even like the idea of having that speaking presentation of opening night tie into the CTO challenge instead of keeping this a secret, actually having these guys prepped and ready ahead of time. That was good. Ray Ozzie, who I really think is a great guy, and I think that the single idea this time was a lot like the last idea, and he's a very consistent person technically. So he didn't say this, but federated cloud is kind of the idea that I came away with from Ray. And there are all these devices, all these rules, all these various platforms, and Microsoft is moving aggressively into the cloud, as you see. And my suspicion is they see this as what you might call a federated cloud, which would be a new thing for Microsoft. Great thanks to John Hagel and JSB. And I couldn't help but thinking as they were talking about pull that this is it really describes everything that's happened to media in the last few years since the net came into play, since the web came into play. And all these questions about business models and media and content and who pays and how much and really come down to the fact that the dinosaurs in the media world live in a push world. And they've lost control of the lever. And now we're in a pull world. You watch when you watch, what you watch, at whatever price you want, basically. And so those guys still don't quite get it. They still think they're going to push this stuff down your throat. And they'll die out or be fired or something. But meanwhile, it's very tough on the group that we need most right now, which are serious writers and analysts who are all on the street. So the sooner that we get back together and figure out the pull side of this as a business model, the better, because we deeply need investigative reporting and clear analysis of today's problems. Clearly, network versus cloud is an ongoing problem. I think the Infrastructure 2.0 working group isn't finished yet. I would encourage you to watch their work as they come public. This all began last year right here, and it'll probably end, I would think, before next FiRe. So what happens as the network meets the cloud is probably the most important technical question facing us today. I loved having Jensen up here with his Zen-like piece, and I didn't believe a word he said when he told me that it was okay if I stole the blueprints for the Tegra chip. But everything else he said I think was true, and I wish him the best with Intel because that's going to be one big fight. I suspect that GPUs, as he says, will be the new thing. And the reason is because the problem landscape has changed. It isn't because we solved all the tech problems about programming multiple cores. It's because the landscape has changed so radically that our problems today are much more like those in the parallel processing world than 2 years ago. I thank Angel Cabrera for his time coming out here, and I appreciate his candor. I haven't seen very many presidents of universities admit that they have a broken business model. And he was really straight up on it and quite clear. For him to praise University of Phoenix is really something. So he understands in an honest, transparent way the problem, and I think he gave us some ideas about how to reformulate what the customer relationship should be between people in education and the institutions that provide it. I love the term peak water. I just love it. You know, there's no peak oil, but there is peak water. So that was great, and I thank that panel. I think if nothing else happens but the meme of peak water gets out, that's a good meme. The same thing is true exactly climate refugees. If nothing else happens but the meme climate refugees gets out, that's a great thing. That alone causes you to understand the problem. And I think the beauty of the film, whatever else you might think about it, is that Michael Nash was smart enough to realize we needed to put a human face on the problem. Enough with the charts and the bars, and half the nation doesn't even understand a bar chart. So for that half the nation, we need to give them pictures of people. And that's exactly what Michael did. Whoever it was who was running the global economics thing, I don't know, it was kind of random, but I did hear one thing from that guy that I wanted to repeat, and that was the idea of an IP-based economic alliance. Makes a lot of sense to me. And I hope that gets traction. It makes a lot of sense. When you look at the combination of the special relationship between UK and the United States, the same kind of thing with America and Australia. When you look at the Commonwealth and kind of what's left of that arrangement, the relationship between Canada and America and the northwestern part of Europe. These are the places I look, and maybe Brazil. These are the places that I look to be smart enough to figure out that they have no future if they don't solve this problem. And once they recognize that as their top trading question and top trading priority, these are the types of societies that are comfortable with each other. So it makes some sense to me socially and culturally that their history already of friendship would be expanded into an idea that IP is how I trade. Eric, thank you for pure food. There's another meme. I just love that, pure food. If all you took out of the idea was pure food, you know, that's good. We need pure food. We don't need tasty food. We don't need, you know, high carbonate. What we need is pure food. And any type of pure food would do it. So thank you, Eric, for being on that path, and we wish you well. Matthew, I think, has left, but Matthew and James, obviously, wow. The idea that you could actually get beyond. Someone said to me yesterday, in medicine, I think it was Zoe Baird, it takes 15 years for a discovery to kind of filter down through the ranks onto the general practitioner's desk. And I have a lot of bad things that I could say about modern medicine in America, but I won't bother right now. It's clearly, science has gotten to the point where we know that the brain is plastic. And there's an excellent book on this by a guy named Doidge, D-O-I-D-G-E, called The Brain That Fixes Itself, or something like that. And so there's part of the state of the art. It's a complete review globally of all the work that's been done until 2008 on this question, and guess what? The brain is plastic. So all the stuff that we were told in school is wrong. It is local at birth, but it can be changed in lots of different ways. You can learn language when you're 75 years old, and you can recover from a stroke even without modern drugs if you understand the plasticity of the brain and how to encourage that kind of repair instead of the way they do it now. So it is exciting to see someone who not only understands that, but who's been paid to work on it, James, and who's come up with a drug-based answer, which is a drug that occurs naturally in the body, and which, if this works, if we can cure stroke after 2 years after the initial onset, that's not only against all the dogma you'll find at the hospital down the street, but it would change tens of millions of lives every year. So that is, I think, today the largest cause of grief in America, and it would be well worth applying more time and money. I deeply appreciated Joe Mann and that panel being here. These are the top two guys, civilians in cyber war, I think. I was really happy we could get them. And the idea that Joe put forward that this is an economic problem mostly. So it's not tomorrow, it's now, and it's not with bullets, it's economic. So pulling airplanes out of the sky is not the point. The point is to wake up and just do intelligent things about our own systems so that they're safer. I was really excited to see the Marisol screen that Paul Jacobs brought out. If you haven't seen it, go find a way to see it because it is stunningly beautiful. And I think we just saw the future of screens right there. It is an OLED. I think that Paul's got it. Inkwell is aging, growing, changing. Thank you to that panel. What wonderful people to be involved in this project. And it occurred to me while I was listening to them that there is a phrase that might apply now to where we are with one-to-one in the world. And that is, as Tom pointed out, we now have a lot of students doing one-to-one. And we had none, really, hardly 10 years ago. So now the point is to accelerate the inevitable. We know it's inevitable. We know the answer. The answer is, having digitized all the information in the world, wouldn't it make sense for students and teachers to be able to touch that? There is no to that question, you know. You just can't say no. So the answer is yes, and it's inevitable, and all we can do now is accelerate that. And I think that would be a great project. I want to thank John Delaney. That was really inspiring. Every time I see him, I like it better. And the idea that we will have these undersea cities, and then you go to Mars. Where, I love Larry's wrap up. I think the idea that what we're really doing is extending the nerve cells. We're really just kind of finding ways, without having to physically go somewhere, to extend our understanding and what it means to be a human being and what it means to understand the world around us. And it's exciting. I can imagine that someone who's 2 generations down, by the time they're my age, how will they think about the ocean? It's going to be so much more accurate and magic than how I think about it. Most of us probably think about it as a flat, 2-dimensional, fairly boring picture, And the idea that John can bring us 3 dimensions and all these sensors, all this various data, is fascinating. I do believe he's right. I think that other countries will follow his lead, and these things will happen all around the world. John Kramer, while I loved every part of what he said, the part that I was most struck by was, we still don't know what time is. Stephen Hawking didn't even come close in his book. And no one today in physics can tell you. And isn't that something? That we're still such babies in terms of our understanding of the physical world that we haven't even figured out what time is. So that's it. Brett Horvath, who you've heard, has offered to help us as well, using social networks for the CTO work. And I will just mention again that we now have early bird pricing of $2,900. It's on the website. Just go to the futureinreview.com and click on registration. You have 1 week to do that, and I hope that all of you rejoin us again next year for an even better FiRe. And before we close, I'd like to have the staff, wherever you are, stand up. Staff, and thank you so much. Sharon, our Thunderbird interns, and everybody else, you did a great job. Thanks, all of you, and I'll see you next year.